I hope, Minister, you have the opportunity to ask questions again in this forum from this side of the table.
No, but you can't get away with it. I'm pointing out your hypocrisy. You can't get away with that answer or that response. Penny, you can't respond because I get to ask the questions. You want to put to me comments that others have made, but you want to duck the fact that some outrageous and ridiculous comments have been made by members of your party. So my point is, I speak for the Labor government on foreign policy as Foreign Minister. Our Cabinet has a very clear position. The government and the Labor Party have a very clear position on AUKUS, and that has not changed.
And it is not shared by one of your assistant ministers, and you are the government, and it's reasonable to ask questions about whether members of the government support a central foreign policy and national security initiative like AUKUS. I understand your discomfort at having to answer questions. I wouldn't be happy either.
I'm not discomforted by it.
Okay, good. Well, then let's keep talking about it.
I'm being really clear. We support AUKUS. Senator Shoebridge does not. He's entitled to that view. We do not.
Josh Wilson does not.
May I finish?
Before we continue, do us a little favour by subscribing to the channel, because over 98% of you watching haven't subscribed. It costs you nothing, not even a penny, to join this channel. Have you subscribed? Thanks so much.
With your permission. Minister, is it still the Albanese government's policy to speak with one voice on foreign policy?
Well, Senator, I saw your very lengthy set of questions. Well, I didn't see them actually. Someone told me about them. In relation to AUKUS yesterday, and I assume you were referring to Mr Husick's comments?
Yes, in part Mr Husick's comments, but not only Mr Husick's comments, but that's why I want to start at the principal level. As you've said many times, it's the policy of the Albanese government to speak with one voice on foreign policy, and I'm just checking that's still the case.
The Cabinet, and in particular, well, the Cabinet has a very clear view in relation to foreign policy and coordinates very closely on foreign policy. We do seek to speak in a manner that's consistent with that and have engaged in very substantial coordination between ministers across national security domains. Mr Husick speaks as a backbench individual and does not speak for the Labor government on this issue. He's entitled to have a view and he's entitled to express it, but I think the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Defence and I and others have made clear what the government's position is.
So a backbencher like Mr Husick is entitled to have his own foreign policy as distinct from the Albanese government's foreign policy?
Well, he's entitled to put a view. It's not his view is not the government's view.
Right. Does you talked about the Cabinet, and the Cabinet is in agreement. Is it applied to the whole ministry? Does the whole ministry have to abide by the Albanese government's foreign policy?
We have a system of collective, well, Westminster system of government is that cabinets are bound. Unlike your party, we have a collective decision-making process with caucus, and unlike your party, caucus is binding. So I'm not sure what your question goes to.
Well, the principle of cabinet solidarity traditionally applies to all members of the ministry, whether they are in cabinet or not. A outer minister cannot depart from government policy and remain a minister.
I don't know what you're referring to, Senator.
Well, you have an assistant minister, Josh Wilson, who is on the public record saying that he is personally opposed to AUKUS, and yet he remains a member of the ministry. So has Josh Wilson changed his views? Does he now support AUKUS, or is he allowed to have a different view from the rest of the ministry on a signature foreign policy and national security issue like AUKUS?
Which comments are you referring to, Senator?
In December last year, I believe it was a podcast. It was first reported more widely by Katina Curtis in the West Australian in March this year. Mr Wilson's, to my knowledge, never contradicted or gone back or clarified those statements. As far as I know, the last thing he said on the public record was that he's opposed to AUKUS.
Well, I suppose if you're asking me whether he's changed his view, it's probably a question for him, isn't it?
I don't have that opportunity to ask him
I'm sure
in this forum.
you could give him a call and ask him what his view is.
That's not traditionally how we do parliamentary oversight
do you not
and
like
scrutiny.
talking to people across the aisle?
I mean, we have more formal ways of asking questions about the government's foreign policy, like Senate estimates.
Senator Paterson, the government's position on AUKUS is very clear. And if you are going to do this, there are a few comments that perhaps I'd like you to understand. Tell me, when Senator when Senator Antic mocked President Zelensky and described him as the little fellow from Ukraine, whatever his name is in the green T-shirt, what his name is, who cares? Did he speak for you? When Senator Canavan said there's a straight line between the naive environmental net zero targets Europe has adopted and the strength and leverage that is given to Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine, did he speak for the coalition? People say things, governments have positions, our position is clear.
One day I hope, Minister, you have the opportunity to ask questions again in this forum from this side of the table.
No, but you can't get away with it. I'm pointing out your hypocrisy. You can't get away with that answer or that response. Penny, you can't respond because I get to ask the questions. You want to put to me comments that others have made, but you want to duck the fact that some outrageous and ridiculous comments have been made by members of your party. So my point is, I speak for the Labor government on foreign policy as Foreign Minister. Our Cabinet has a very clear position. The government and the Labor Party have a very clear position on AUKUS, and that has not changed.
And it is not shared by one of your assistant ministers, and you are the government, and it's reasonable to ask questions about whether members of the government support a central foreign policy and national security initiative like AUKUS. I understand your discomfort at having to answer questions. I wouldn't be happy either.
I'm not discomforted by it.
Okay, good. Well, then let's keep talking about it.
I'm being really clear. We support AUKUS. Senator Shoebridge does not. He's entitled to that view. We do not.
Josh Wilson does not.
May I finish? We have taken AUKUS through every party process that is relevant. We've taken it through shadow cabinet when we were in opposition. We've taken it to national conference. We have taken it through the caucus of the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party, and we've taken it through our cabinet. The Labor Party's position is very clear. Now, you may wish to try and play politics on this in some vain attempt to demonstrate your national security credentials. What I think you're demonstrating is your lack of national security credentials, because actually the best thing for this country is for all of the debate and all of the disputation around submarines, which dogged your party's period in government, which bequeathed a capability gap for us, to be resolved, and for the country to be focused as one on the jobs and capability and deterrence that this project comprises.
Well, the debate about AUKUS is not between my party and your party. The debate about AUKUS is in your caucus.
Canberra delivered another dramatic political showdown this week, and this time the clash wasn't about inflation, housing or migration. Instead, it centred on one of Australia's biggest national security commitments, AUKUS. Inside a tense parliamentary hearing, Senator James Paterson repeatedly challenged Foreign Minister Penny Wong over whether Labor was truly speaking with one voice on foreign policy after public comments from members of the government's own ranks sparked fresh political debate. From the opening question, it was obvious this wasn't going to be an ordinary exchange. Paterson didn't immediately launch into arguments about submarines or defence spending. Instead, he began with a principle that Minister Wong herself has often spoken about in the past, that governments should present a consistent position on foreign policy and national security. His question was simple. Is it still the Albanese government's policy to speak with one voice on foreign policy? At first glance, it sounded like a routine procedural question, but everyone in the room knew exactly where it was heading. Only days earlier, public comments from Labor figures had reignited discussion about AUKUS and whether every member of the government supported Australia's signature defence partnership with the United States and the United Kingdom. Minister Wong answered carefully. She explained that Cabinet has a clear position on foreign policy, that ministers coordinate closely across national security portfolios, and that the government's position on AUKUS remains unchanged. She also distinguished between official government policy and comments made by individual backbench members. According to Wong, backbenchers are entitled to express personal views, but those views do not become government policy. For the government, the position remained straightforward. The Cabinet position was clear. The Prime Minister's position was clear. The Foreign Minister's position was clear. Labour supports AUKUS. But Paterson wasn't satisfied. Instead of debating the merits of AUKUS itself, he shifted the discussion toward accountability. If Cabinet solidarity is so important, he asked, what happens when members of the wider ministry publicly express different opinions? That question immediately changed the tone of the hearing. The discussion was no longer simply about submarines. It became a debate about discipline inside government. Paterson referred to public comments made by Assistant Minister Josh Wilson, noting reports that he had previously expressed personal opposition to AUKUS. If those reports accurately reflected his position, Paterson argued, how could the government continue insisting it spoke with one voice? Minister Wong resisted accepting the premise. She replied that questions about Mr. Wilson's personal comments should be directed to him. The government's official policy, she said repeatedly, had not changed. Again and again, Wong returned to the same point. Governments have official positions. Individuals sometimes express personal views. Those are not necessarily the same thing, Paterson continued pressing. He argued that members of the ministry traditionally share collective responsibility for government policy. If ministers publicly disagree with major national security initiatives, he suggested, Australians are entitled to ask whether collective responsibility is being consistently applied. The exchange quickly became one of the most animated moments of the hearing. Rather than limiting herself to answering the specific question, Wong turned the spotlight back onto the opposition. She pointed to examples where coalition politicians had publicly made comments on international affairs that differed from the coalition leadership's position. Her argument was that political parties across the spectrum contain individuals who occasionally make controversial or independent remarks. Governments, however, are ultimately judged by their official policy, not every statement made by every parliamentarian. That response triggered another round of questions. Paterson argued there was an important distinction between comments made by backbenchers and comments made by members of the executive government. If Assistant Minister Wilson remained part of the ministry, he asked, shouldn't Australians expect him to support one of the government's central national security policies? Minister Wong again declined to speculate on another minister's personal views. Instead, she emphasised the processes through which Labour had adopted AUKUS. She pointed out that the policy had been considered through shadow cabinet, while Labour was in opposition, debated within the party, endorsed through caucus processes, and adopted by cabinet. From her perspective, that demonstrated the government's commitment to the policy. For Paterson, however, another issue remained unresolved. He argued that when public comments appear inconsistent with official government policy, questions naturally arise about unity and discipline. Those questions, he said, are legitimate subjects for parliamentary scrutiny. Outside Parliament, the exchange immediately attracted attention. National security experts noted that bipartisan support for AUKUS has generally remained one of the defining features of Australian defence policy in recent years. Political commentators, meanwhile, focused less on the submarine partnership itself and more on the broader issue of party unity. Supporters of the government argued that Minister Wong clearly restated Labour's official position throughout the hearing. Supporters of the opposition argued that Paterson had raised reasonable questions about how collective responsibility operates when individual members publicly express different opinions. Social media quickly amplified both perspectives. Some viewers praised Wong for refusing to be drawn into discussing internal personnel matters. Others praised Paterson for persistently seeking clarification about ministerial accountability. As often happens in Australian politics, the parliamentary exchange soon became part of a much larger public conversation. Internationally, AUKUS continues attracting significant attention because it represents one of Australia's largest defence capability projects in decades. The partnership also plays an important role in Australia's strategic relationship with both Washington and London. That broader context helps explain why even internal political disagreements about AUKUS generate substantial public interest. Back inside the hearing, neither side shifted position. Paterson maintained that questions about ministerial unity deserved clear answers. Wong maintained that the government's policy was settled and that individual comments did not alter Australia's official position. By the conclusion of the exchange, one thing had become obvious. The disagreement wasn't really about whether the government supports AUKUS. Minister Wong repeatedly confirmed that it does. Instead, the disagreement centred on how governments manage differing opinions within their own ranks while maintaining confidence in major national security policies. That distinction matters because Australia's defence and foreign policy decisions often rely on long-term certainty extending well beyond a single parliamentary term. Political debate over those decisions is inevitable. But governments also seek to reassure allies, defence industries and the Australian public that core strategic commitments remain stable. This week's hearing illustrated exactly how difficult that balance can become. Strong parliamentary scrutiny, strong political disagreement, but also repeated reaffirmation of Australia's official AUKUS policy. Whether viewers believe Senator Paterson exposed an important accountability issue or believe Minister Wong successfully defended the government's position will largely depend on their own interpretation of the exchange. What cannot be disputed is that national security remains one of the most closely watched issues in Australian politics, and debates over accountability, ministerial responsibility, and foreign policy will continue attracting enormous public attention. So what do you think? Did Senator Paterson raise legitimate questions about ministerial accountability? Did Minister Wong provide sufficient clarity about the government's position? And how important is unified messaging when Australia is dealing with major national security partnerships like AUKUS? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Australian politics, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with friends and family. With Parliament continuing to debate Australia's biggest strategic decisions, there will be many more political clashes still to come.